Hello, welcome to our new series of the great composers for our music theory class. We will continue with the Romantic period. This will be like the second half of the Romantic composers. And our composer today is Mr. Stephen Foster. He's an American composer. We finally get to see and enjoy music of an American composer. Stephen Foster, his instrument was the piano, and he wrote a lot of songs about the South, but he only visited there once. We will continue and talk about Stephen Foster's music and songs later in the presentation. But just to name a few right now, two of his favorite songs became state songs: My Old Kentucky Home and Old Folks at Home. Now, can you guess which states go with each of these songs? You probably can guess the first one, but the second one, maybe you can do a search on Google and find the state that Old Folks at Home has become the state song for. And anybody who can message me that answer will get extra credit points. Stephen Foster was born on July 4th in 1826. So this was during America's 50th birthday celebration. And he was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. His father, William Foster, was an Irishman. He was a wealthy Irishman. He was able to give some land to help start the community of Lawrenceville in Pennsylvania. He also became a state legislator and a mayor. His mother, Eliza Cleland Foster, was an English immigrant, and both his father and mother worked very hard to provide a very comfortable home for their whole family. Stephen Foster had an older sister and 7 older brothers, so Stephen was the youngest of 9 children in his family. During his childhood, Stephen Foster was known to constantly whistle and sing tunes, jotting down tunes, and march around the house with a drum and a feather in his head. And he taught himself to play the piano and read and write music. And one time his mother had commented in a letter to Stephen's oldest brother, saying, "There is something totally original about him." Stephen Foster was a very well-behaved and very intelligent student, but he didn't like to spend his time studying. Now, be careful of learning after this example, though. It doesn't mean that you need to stop studying. Stephen Foster preferred rambling in the woods and along the riverbank near his home. He loved being outdoors, so just like Beethoven, as we studied him, Beethoven always loved nature walks. Well, Stephen Foster was no different. He loved being out with the rustling leaves and hearing the sounds of the chirping birds and the rippling water, and that's what soothed him. His favorite pastime was actually listening to the hired hands, the servants in their home, singing as they worked in his parents' home. He also loved to go out to the docks, and the men would be loading the riverboats and singing and chanting at the same time. So Stephen Foster loved going out there and listening to them as well. He also went to church with their family maid, Olivia, and he was touched by the beautiful and sometimes sad melodies that he would hear in church as well. So I'm sure that was a lot of influence and inspiration, too, for him with his songs. At age 13, he had already composed a quartet for flutes. At age 18, he published his first song, Open Thy Lattice Love. During his teenage years, as he grew, his parents knew and were aware of his musical talents and interests, but his father referred to his musical interests as a strange talent. And they were very concerned for him. They did not want him to be a musician full time because they didn't think that would allow him to be able to make a good living as a full time musician. So, very similar to many composers that we've already studied as well. He, his parents wanted to make sure that he would be able to earn a very comfortable living. So they sent him to Cincinnati to work as a bookkeeper for his brother. Now, at age 29, Stephen had an opportunity to sail down the Ohio River on a steamboat. This inspired him to compose a song. But he also enjoyed hearing the African American deckhands or servants as they're on their ships singing, or on the steamboats singing and working. He loved hearing that. And during his time in Cincinnati, he composed and published several songs already: Away Down South, Old Uncle Ned, and Oh Susanna. He spent 4 years in Cincinnati as a bookkeeper. He returned to Pittsburgh after that, and he became a full-time composer of songs. Now, he was the very first American composer to support himself fully as a composer. Many other American composers during this time, or even before this time, they composed music, but most of them as a hobby. Nobody before Stephen Foster had just become a full-fledged musical composer. So, Stephen Foster is known as America's first pop songwriter. He earned a lot of excellent royalties from his songs. Royalties meaning money that he received for each of the songs. And he received a lot of good pay for that. But he didn't manage his finances very well. And we'll hear more about the effects on that later. When he was 24 years old, in 1850, he married Jane Denny McDowell. The following year, in 1851, they had a daughter, Marion, whom they both adored and loved very much. In 1853, Stephen Foster took his whole family and moved to New York, where most of his songs were being published. But because he managed his finances so poorly, his wife had to leave him and had to go find work. So she took their daughter, and they moved, and lived separately from him. So for the rest of his life, Stephen Foster lived by himself. And in 1864, he had an accident at home. He was alone at home, and he was found cut and burned. And when they took him to the hospital, all they could find on him was 38 cents. And they found a little slip of paper saying, "Dear friends and gentle hearts." Many people wonder if that might have been the title of a new song that he was thinking of, getting ready to compose. But it was also a statement that many people regarded was a true statement of Stephen Foster, because he was a dear friend to many people. He had a gentle heart. In Pittsburgh, there is a memorial. Here is the statue of the Stephen Foster Memorial. And then here is another memorial for him that was built in 1949 by the Woodmen of the World of Florida. The plaque here says, "Creator of American folk song, singer of the simple joys of home and family, and poet who immortalized the Suwannee River."